Welcome to my channel. What if I told you that the biggest reason you are not speaking English fluently has nothing to do with grammar, vocabulary, talent, age, or even confidence? What if the skill you have been ignoring is actually the skill that can transform your English faster than almost anything else? Many learners spend years trying to force themselves to speak more, memorize more words, and study more grammar rules, yet they still hesitate when it is time to have a real conversation. They pause, they translate in their heads, they search for words, and they wonder why speaking feels so difficult. Meanwhile, other people seem to speak naturally and effortlessly. They do not pause as much. They do not struggle to build sentences. They simply communicate. Many learners look at these people and assume they have a special gift. Maybe they have a better memory. Maybe they are naturally talented. Maybe English is easier for them. But in most cases, the truth is much simpler. They became strong speakers because they first became strong listeners. Think about how children learn their first language. Before they say their first word, they spend months listening. Before they create complete sentences, they spend years hearing thousands and thousands of sentences. Before they speak fluently, they absorb language through their ears. Listening comes before speaking. This principle does not change when you learn English. Unfortunately, many learners focus almost entirely on speaking. They try to push themselves to talk more. They worry constantly about grammar mistakes. They become frustrated because they cannot express themselves clearly. Yet they often ignore the skill that makes speaking easier. That skill is listening. Your ears are the doorway to fluency. Every sentence you hear teaches your brain something valuable. Every conversation introduces new patterns. Every listening session trains your brain to recognize natural English. The more quality English you listen to, the more natural English begins to feel. Imagine trying to build a beautiful house without a foundation. You might have attractive walls, expensive furniture, and a strong roof, but without a solid foundation, the entire structure becomes unstable. Speaking English works exactly the same way. Speaking is the house. Listening is the foundation. Without strong listening skills, speaking becomes slow, difficult, and frustrating. Many learners think listening and speaking are separate skills, but they are deeply connected. The words you speak often come from words and sentence patterns you have heard many times before. Think about your native language. You do not create every sentence by consciously applying grammar rules. Instead, your brain automatically uses patterns that it has heard thousands of times. The same process happens when learning English. Every time you listen, your brain collects information. It learns vocabulary. It learns pronunciation. It learns sentence structure. It learns rhythm. It learns natural expressions. Even when you feel like you are not learning, your brain is quietly gathering data. Imagine two learners. One spends 30 minutes every day listening to conversations, stories, interviews, and podcasts. The other spends 30 minutes every day studying grammar but rarely listens. After several months, something interesting happens. The first learner starts understanding English more naturally. They recognize common expressions. They understand how speakers connect words. They develop a natural feel for the language. The second learner may know more grammar rules, but when real people speak quickly, they often struggle to follow the conversation. Why does this happen? Because language is not only knowledge, language is also familiarity. Listening creates familiarity. The more you listen, the more English begins to feel normal. This is extremely important because many learners believe fluency comes only from speaking more. Speaking matters, but speaking becomes much easier when your mind is already filled with English. Imagine trying to draw water from an empty well. You cannot. The well must be filled first. Listening fills the well. Speaking draws from it. If you want better speaking skills, you must first fill your mind with English through listening. This is one reason some learners improve surprisingly fast. They listen while walking, exercising, traveling, relaxing, or doing daily tasks. English becomes part of their everyday life. Slowly, their brain begins recognizing patterns. Then, one day, they notice something amazing. Words come faster. Sentences feel easier. Speaking becomes less stressful. Confidence begins to grow, not because they forced themselves to speak perfectly, but because listening prepared their brain for speaking. Remember this powerful truth. Great speakers are almost always great listeners first. The more quality English you hear, the more quality English you will eventually speak. Every minute you spend listening is helping build the fluent English speaker you want to become. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is trying to train their mouth before they train their ears. They want to speak fluently immediately. They want perfect pronunciation immediately. They want confidence immediately. They want to sound natural immediately. But language learning does not work that way. Before your mouth can produce English naturally, your ears must become familiar with English naturally. Think about learning music. Imagine someone wants to become an excellent piano player. Would they start by performing difficult songs without ever listening to music? Of course not. They would first listen carefully. They would become familiar with rhythm, melodies, timing, and flow. Only then would playing become easier. English works in exactly the same way. Before you can speak naturally, you must become familiar with how English sounds. Your ears must learn the music of the language. Many learners spend years studying vocabulary and grammar while spending very little time listening. Then they become frustrated. They know many words, they understand many grammar rules, yet speaking still feels difficult. The reason is simple. Their brain has not heard enough English. Language is not just information. Language is sound, rhythm, pronunciation, and patterns. The only way to become comfortable with those things is through listening. Imagine your brain is like a library. Every time you hear English, new books are added to that library. Every sentence becomes a resource. Every conversation becomes a lesson. Every podcast becomes practice. The larger your library becomes, the easier it is for your brain to find words and sentences when you want to speak. This is why listening is so powerful. It gives your brain examples, thousands of examples. Over time, your brain begins recognizing patterns automatically. Imagine hearing sentences like these again and again. How are you doing today? What are you working on? I will think about it. That sounds like a good idea. At first, they seem like separate sentences. After hearing them repeatedly, your brain stores them as complete units. Later, when you want to speak, you do not need to build every sentence from grammar rules. Your brain simply remembers what it has heard before. This is exactly what happens in your native language. You are not constantly analyzing grammar when you speak. You are using patterns learned through years of listening. The goal is to create the same process with English. Many learners ask how they can train their ears. The answer is surprisingly simple. Listen every day, not once a week, not only when you feel motivated, every day. Consistency is far more important than intensity. Listening for 20 minutes every day is often more effective than listening for 3 hours once a week. Your brain learns through repetition, regular exposure, and frequent contact with the language. This means English should become part of your daily routine. Listen while walking. Listen while exercising. Listen while cleaning your room. Listen while traveling. Listen during small moments throughout your day. These minutes may seem small, but they add up and create enormous improvement over time. There is another important point. Choose listening material that you can mostly understand. Many learners jump directly into difficult content. They listen to advanced interviews, fast conversations, and complex discussions. Then they understand almost nothing and become discouraged. Instead, choose content that is slightly above your current level. You should understand enough to follow the main message while still learning new words and expressions. This creates the perfect learning environment. Your brain stays challenged without becoming overwhelmed. As your listening improves, your confidence improves. You begin recognizing more words. You begin understanding conversations more easily. You begin noticing pronunciation patterns. You begin hearing how native speakers connect words together. Eventually, something remarkable happens. English starts feeling less like a foreign language and more like something familiar. This familiarity is incredibly important because fluency is not only about knowledge. Fluency is about comfort. The more comfortable your brain becomes with English sounds, the easier speaking becomes. Think about a child learning to speak. Before children say thousands of words, they hear thousands of words. Before they create sentences, they listen to countless sentences. Their ears are trained first, their mouth follows later. English learners should follow the same principle. Train your ears first. Fill your mind with English. Surround yourself with the language. Give your brain thousands of examples. Allow English to become familiar. Then, when it is time to speak, you will discover that speaking feels easier, smoother, and more natural. Remember this powerful truth. Your mouth can only produce what your ears have learned to recognize. The better you train your ears, the better your English speaking will become. So stop asking only how you can speak more and start asking how you can listen better, because every great English speaker begins as a great English listener. Another common mistake learners make is believing they must understand every single word they hear. The moment they miss one word, they panic. They stop paying attention to the speaker and become obsessed with that one unknown word. While they are thinking about it, the conversation continues and they miss even more information. This creates frustration and makes listening feel harder than it really is. Successful listening does not mean understanding 100% of the words. Successful listening means understanding the message, the idea, and the overall meaning behind what is being said. Imagine you are watching a movie in your native language. Do you focus on every single word that every character says? Usually not. You focus on the story, the emotions, and the message. Even if you miss a few words, you can still understand what is happening. This is exactly how you should approach English listening. Your goal is not to catch every word. Your goal is to understand the meaning. Imagine someone says, "Yesterday, I was running late, so I grabbed a quick coffee and rushed to work." Maybe you do not know the phrase running late. Maybe you missed the word grabbed. Yet, you understand yesterday, coffee, and work. Your brain can often guess the missing information. You understand that the person was in a hurry and went to work after getting coffee. That is successful listening. Many learners believe successful listening means understanding 100% of the words, but in reality, successful listening often means understanding the main idea. Native speakers do the same thing. Even they do not catch every word in every conversation. Sometimes people speak quickly. Sometimes there is background noise. Sometimes a word is unfamiliar. Yet they continue listening because they focus on meaning. English learners should develop the same habit. Think of listening as a puzzle. If a few pieces are missing, you can still see the picture. You do not need every piece to understand what the picture shows. Listening works in a similar way. You need enough information to understand the overall message. This mindset changes everything. Instead of worrying about every unknown word, you focus on communication. Instead of feeling stressed, you become curious. Instead of giving up, you continue listening. Real progress begins when you stop chasing perfection and start focusing on understanding. Children learn language this way. They hear thousands of words they do not understand, yet they keep listening. They observe. They pay attention. Gradually, the meaning becomes clear. English learners should follow the same process. Allow yourself to miss some words. Allow yourself to be imperfect. Focus on understanding rather than perfection. Real conversations move quickly. People do not stop every few seconds to explain vocabulary. If you train yourself to focus only on individual words, conversations will always feel difficult. But if you train yourself to understand the overall meaning, conversations become easier and more enjoyable. Your brain becomes more flexible. Your comprehension becomes faster. Your confidence grows. Imagine two learners listening to the same podcast. The first learner pauses constantly, trying to understand every word. They become frustrated and overwhelmed. The second learner focuses on the main message, follows the story, and enjoys the content. After several months, the second learner often improves much faster because they spend more time listening and less time worrying. Listening should not feel like a test. Listening should feel like communication. The goal is to understand people, ideas, stories, and conversations. As your listening improves, your vocabulary grows naturally. Your grammar awareness improves naturally. Your pronunciation understanding develops naturally. All of this becomes easier when you stop chasing every word and start focusing on meaning. A practical exercise can help. Choose a short English video or podcast. Listen once without stopping. Do not pause, do not translate, do not search for words. Simply focus on understanding the main idea. Ask yourself who is speaking, what they are talking about, and what message they are trying to share. Then listen again. You will be surprised by how much more you understand the second time. This simple habit trains your brain to focus on meaning rather than individual words. Over time, you become more relaxed, more confident, and a much better listener. Because listening and speaking are deeply connected, you also become a better speaker. Another important lesson is learning real English through daily listening. Many learners treat English like a school subject instead of a living language. They study grammar rules, memorize vocabulary lists, complete exercises, and read explanations. These things can help, but many learners spend years learning about English without truly experiencing English. Daily listening changes that. It helps you move from studying the language to living with the language. Think again about how you learned your first language. Nobody handed you a grammar book when you were a baby. Nobody asked you to memorize long vocabulary lists. You learned because you heard language every day. You heard conversations, stories, questions, answers, emotions, opinions, and everyday communication. Your brain absorbed patterns naturally. English learners can use the same principle. The more English you hear, the more familiar English becomes. Familiarity is one of the biggest secrets to fluency. Imagine two learners. One studies English for 1 hour every weekend. The other listens to English for 20 minutes every day. Over time, the second learner often makes greater progress because language learning depends heavily on regular exposure. Your brain learns through repetition, consistency, and frequent contact with the language. Daily listening provides exactly that. Every day you hear English, your brain becomes a little more comfortable with it. Every day your understanding grows stronger. Every day your confidence increases. These improvements may seem invisible at first, but they become powerful over time. Like drops of rain filling a river, small listening sessions create enormous progress when repeated consistently. English slowly stops becoming something you study and starts becoming something you experience every day. That is where real transformation begins. One reason daily listening is so effective is that it teaches you real English. Textbooks often teach formal English, but real people speak differently. They use contractions, common expressions, connected speech, natural rhythm, and everyday phrases that appear repeatedly in conversations. The best way to become familiar with these patterns is through listening. Imagine hearing expressions such as, "That sounds great, I cannot wait, let us see, to be honest, at the end of the day," or "I will figure it out." After hearing them many times, they become familiar. You stop translating them, you stop analyzing them, you simply understand them. Eventually, you begin using them yourself. This is one of the most natural ways to improve speaking. Listening also improves pronunciation. Many learners struggle with pronunciation because they rarely hear enough English. They know the words, but they do not know how those words actually sound in real conversations. Daily listening helps solve this problem. The more you listen, the more familiar you become with stress patterns, connected speech, intonation, and natural pronunciation. Over time, your own pronunciation improves because your ears become more sensitive to English sounds. Listening is not passive, it is active training for your brain. Every sentence teaches something, every conversation teaches something, every podcast teaches something. Even when you do not realize it, your brain is learning. Many learners become discouraged because improvement feels slow. They listen for a few days and expect dramatic results. When that does not happen, they quit. This is a mistake. Language learning is a process. Imagine planting a tree. You water it today and tomorrow, it looks almost the same. You water it again next week, and it still seems small. But months later, the growth becomes obvious. Listening works exactly the same way. Progress is often invisible at first. Then one day, you suddenly notice that you understand more, recognize more words, follow conversations more easily, and respond more quickly. These changes happen because of consistent listening. Many learners ask what they should listen to. The answer is simple: listen to content you genuinely enjoy. If you enjoy stories, listen to stories. If you enjoy interviews, listen to interviews. If you enjoy conversations, listen to conversations. If you enjoy educational content, listen to educational content. The best listening material is often the material you can continue listening to consistently because consistency matters more than perfection. Another powerful technique is copying rhythm and pronunciation. Many English learners believe that fluency comes only from vocabulary and grammar. While both are important, rhythm and pronunciation also play a huge role. Think about music. A song is not just words, it is rhythm, timing, pauses, and flow. English works in the same way. Native speakers do not simply say words one by one. They connect words, stress important words, change their tone, and create a natural rhythm. Many learners know the correct words but still sound unnatural because they have never trained themselves to hear and copy English rhythm. Listening gives you that opportunity. Every time you listen, you hear where speakers pause, which words they emphasize, and how sentences flow. A simple exercise can help tremendously. Choose a short sentence. Listen carefully, then repeat it exactly as you hear it. Copy the pronunciation, rhythm, pauses, and energy. At first, it may feel strange, but with practice, it becomes natural. Children learn pronunciation by copying sounds they hear. English learners can do the same. You do not need to memorize endless pronunciation rules. You need to listen carefully and imitate consistently. Listening also helps build vocabulary naturally. Many people try to memorize long word lists, but they often forget those words because they learned them in isolation. Listening gives vocabulary meaning. When you hear a word in a real conversation, you learn not only the meaning, but also the pronunciation, context, and natural usage. Repeated exposure strengthens memory. Words you hear again and again gradually become familiar. Eventually, they become part of your active vocabulary. A useful habit is keeping a small notebook. When you hear an interesting word or phrase several times, write it down. Focus on useful language that appears repeatedly. Over time, your vocabulary grows naturally through meaningful exposure. Finally, create a powerful listening routine. Many learners do not fail because they use the wrong methods. They fail because they are inconsistent. They practice one day, skip 3 days, return briefly, and then stop again. Fluency requires consistency. A listening routine removes guesswork. Choose a specific time each day and make listening a habit. 20 minutes daily can be more powerful than several hours once a week. Great speakers are usually great listeners first. They spend countless hours listening to conversations, stories, interviews, podcasts, and real communication. Listening fills the mind with language. Every sentence becomes a future resource. Every expression becomes a future tool. Speaking is not created from nothing. Speaking grows from what you have absorbed. If you want better speaking, strengthen your listening. If you want natural speaking, listen to natural English. If you want confident speaking, spend time understanding spoken English. Remember this powerful truth. The ears are the gateway to the mouth. The more quality English you hear, the more quality English you will eventually speak. Fluency is built one listening session at a time, one conversation at a time, one story at a time, and one day at a time. Trust the process, stay patient, keep listening, keep learning, keep growing, and never give up. One day, the English you once struggled to understand will become the English you speak confidently, naturally, and proudly Because you stayed consistent and allowed listening to guide you toward fluency every single day.